Adam Munsterteiger here with Brian Howell. And Brian, I'm trying to remember. I think the last time we actually did analysis video was the spring game. Have we done one since?
I don't know if we have or not. It feels like that was a long time ago, even though it was like what 5, 6 weeks ago. Feels a lot longer than that. So it might have been the spring game.
Yeah, well, obviously a lot's happened since then, so we're going to catch up a
Mhm.
little bit here. And now we're really getting into the bulk of having a lot to talk about with some of those summer workout videos that are going to come out and then leading up to
Yeah.
camp. So it's almost kind of like the end of the real dead part of the off season is coming to an end here.
Yeah. In fact, I was just looking at the credential application for Big 12 Media Days, and that's in like a little over a month from now. Now
Yeah.
that we're already in June. So yeah, and kind of we sort of talk about once you get to media days, that's sort of the unofficial kickoff to the season, and it's just a short ramp up. I think it's about 3 weeks after that fall camp starts. So, yeah, it feels like a lull right now, but it's going to go fast, and before we know it, we're going to be in the heart of the season.
Even in this lull, there have been new transfers that have jumped on board. We're going to talk
Hmm.
about that. But first off, before we get into this current squad, you wrote a story on Eric Bieniemy and Chris Hudson both being on the ballot for the 2016 College Football Hall of Fame. I'm kind of confused as to the timing of when these guys get on the ballot, but obviously it's great to see both of those great buffs on there this year.
Yeah, and to correct you, it's 2026, not 2016. So
2026, yeah.
I just had to make it funny there. Yeah, it's interesting how the ballot works because some of these guys are like Bieniemy's on there for the 10th time, but he hasn't been on there every year. So like he wasn't on it last year, but he was, a couple years before that. And so I don't really know like how they get on there, why they're off sometimes, why they're on, but um, you know, the CU's had an interesting pattern. There's 10 guys that are in the Hall of Fame now, and it feels like almost all of them have been, most of them have been since you and I started covering the Buffs. It's like they've kind of retroactively like, oh, we better get some Buffs in there. And there's been every other year for the last few years, there's been one. So part of the 2024 class, this last year was Dion Figures. 2022 was Rashawn, and 2020 was Michael Westbrook. So, and I've been told that they don't really do one. They won't do the same school like back to back years. And so I guess the pattern is every other year, which means 2026. Maybe that's the year for Chris Hudson or Eric Bieniemy. I don't know, but both those guys have been on the ballot a few times before, and both deserving at some point.
So could they both theoretically get in if they get enough votes or no?
I don't think both would get in. I
Okay.
would guess that only one would get in, but I don't know. I mean, and looking at the list, I mean, there's not a it's an interesting class. Usually there's some really, really big names, and I don't have it right in front of me. Like RG3 is on there. Mark Ingram is in there. So there's a couple Heisman Trophy winners in there that you would think would be slam dunk choices. And so I don't even know how big the class is, but I know there's about 80 guys on the ballot. So there's a lot on the ballot. It'll be interesting to see if they get in. Like I said, Bieniemy's been on there 10 times since 2010. So he's been on the ballot a lot over the last 15 years.
I see he's still doing his running backs coaching thing. He's back in the
Yeah.
NFL now, so good for him. I know it didn't work out well for him at UCLA last season. That was kind of just a mess on all aspects with that program last year. But he's found his footing.
Yeah.
He's made to be a running backs coach in the NFL.
Yeah, and he's had an interesting career trajectory over the last couple of years because he was at OC for the Chiefs for like 5 years, won a couple Super Bowls and a lot of head NFL head coaching jobs. And since then, he's just kind of bounced around. I mean, he was with the Commanders and then UCLA, now with the Bears, and it feels like at least as far as title goes, the trajectory is going the opposite way of what we thought it might be going in 2020. So it's interesting to see he's what his career will do. I think he's deserving of an OC shot again at some point, and I don't know if he'll get a head coaching job or not. But good coach. He's one of my favorite people, and I saw him earlier this year at Bill McCartney's funeral and chatted with him briefly. I always love talking to Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, I think it's cool with Chris Hudson too being on there. The fact that when
Yeah,
Dion Figures got inducted a couple of years ago, he said, "Now my goal is to get my little brother in there."
yeah,
That
yeah.
he get my brother in there. That he wanted Chris Hudson to get in there. So we're seeing that next phase of it. in terms of Colorado in the Hall of Fame for college. The Buffaloes are back on campus. The returning players and the newcomers have been filtering back in really over the course of the last week, getting back to work this week. How does this feel to you? It feels different without Shador
Yeah.
Sanders and Travis Hunter, and we even heard Coach Prime say that there's no way to replace those guys, but I still think this is a better football team. I think there's a lot of people that are going to doubt that until we actually see it come to fruition. But I also do agree
Yeah.
with him that the lines are both better.
Yeah, and frankly, I'm one that kind of doubts that for now until I see it that the entire team is better. But it is interesting right now, although Shador and Travis have been in the news a lot because they're starting their NFL careers, and so in some ways it feels like well, it's still Travis and Shador overload because they're going through the mini camps and they went through rookie camp and obviously the draft, things like that. So they've been in the news quite a bit. But it is weird seeing Travis in a Jags uniform and Shador Sanders wearing that orange helmet. Like that doesn't look right, but they're on to bigger and better things, and I think it's kind of new for us Colorado fans, or us to cover Colorado, but also the fans because there have not been high profile draft picks from Colorado in a very long time, and so to see Colorado draft picks getting attention at the NFL level is kind of interesting because we haven't seen that a whole lot in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the former Buffs that were in the NFL last year were hurt. So I do like a weekly feature, and it was like really
Yeah.
hard to put that together last year. I think this coming year, that's going to be one of our more popular features, is
Yeah.
just tracking what these guys do.
And even the ones that are getting drafted, I mean, there's been the ones that have been drafted lately have been sixth, seventh round picks that they're not going to get a lot of media attention, and you have to go back, over a decade to the last first round picks, and social media wasn't what it is now. And so, it's just the attention on these guys is different from what we've seen in the past, just because the Buffs have not had a whole lot of high draft picks.
Watching those Cleveland Browns reporters overanalyze stuff during OTAs is kind of like us during spring ball, isn't it?
Yeah. It was so funny because once Shador was drafted, our buddy, Matt Smith, he and I were texting a little bit, and we were both like, oh, buckle up, Cleveland media, because you got a summer of stuff to talk about here with Shador Sanders, and they certainly have. I mean, I've been on I was on several Cleveland stations before the draft, and then after the draft, I did one just the other day where they just want to keep talking about Shador, and yeah, and they haven't even got to training camp yet, Adam. So, yeah, buckle up, Cleveland media. It's going to be a ride there, and but it looks like Shador's making the absolute most of it. And I don't know about you, but I think he's handled it the way I thought he would. Kind of mature about it, and he's not bitter about where he was drafted. He's just like, hey, cool, I got a shot. Let's go out there and work.
Yeah, and you look at that roster, and I'm sorry, Dylan Gabriel is not beating out Shador Sanders when
I
push
wouldn't
comes
think
to
so. Yeah.
shove. Joe Flacco, when was his prime? 10 years ago?
Right.
No offense. Maybe you
Yeah.
want him as your backup or Kenny Pickett as your backup, but
Yeah.
I mean Shador Sanders is the most talented quarterback on that roster with the
Yeah.
highest upside.
I think so. And I keep telling people my prediction is Flacco wins the job and Shador's the starter at some point this year. I mean, I was looking, I think it was 2017 was the last time Flacco played more than 9 games in a season, and so he's not lasting a 17 game season at 40 if he hasn't even played that in his 30s, late 30s. So I think Shador's going to be the starter at some point. I look at that quarterback room and I'm like, that's almost as good of a spot as you could have possibly landed with the talent in that room or the lack of talent in that room, in my opinion. And, you know, I think it's a good situation when your competition is a 40-year-old, a guy who's entering his like third or fourth year, but on his third or fourth team, and then Dylan Gabriel. I think that's a pretty good situation for Shador. If
Yeah,
he's as good, if he's as good as we think he is, that's a great situation for Shador.
and I do think he's really good. And
Yeah,
I do think in 5 years that the New Orleans Saints and the New York Giants are kind of kicking themselves. We'll
right.
see how it plays out.
Yeah,
Obviously, this is covered on every other platform out there, and I like to stick more with the current Buffs.
Right.
And Coach Prime's trying to get back to them. He was on with Asante Samuel on his podcast, and they cleared up a beef they had a long time ago when Coach Prime was on the NFL Network. It was a pretty good interview. It's a little over an hour. If you're driving around, I would recommend pulling that up. It's some good dialogue. But Coach Prime at the very end of that interview revealed that he's not been doing great lately. He lost 14 pounds. He did say, quote, I'm coming back. So I would expect him back in Boulder soon. They do have some recruits lined up for this coming weekend. I mean, first off, Coach Prime's been through so much medically the last few years. You got to start with the human element and just
Yeah.
hope that he's doing okay. 14 pounds, you're going to feel weak and tired, and that's not a good situation. So hopefully, we see him come back to Boulder with that regular vigor that we see from Coach Prime.
Yeah, I could lose 14 pounds and feel great. For him, probably not so much, but yeah, you hope he gets back to that. And he has been through a lot. I mean, you go back to the Jackson days, and it's been well chronicled. But yeah, he's been through a lot physically, and hopefully he's back on his feet, soon and back with the Buffs because they need him. And his obviously his presence around town and around that building is huge.
Just going into the summer, a couple of things stood out to me when I just kind of look at where this football team is. And the first is, Brian, I want to ask you this question. You've been covering the Buffs for a very
Yeah.
long time. Have you seen an offensive line group 1 to 16 like the group they have right now in terms of the depth of that group?
No, I don't think so. And I'm still very curious to see how it all comes together and where the pieces are going to land. But I look at it and I keep thinking, I don't know how this group won't be better than what they were last year. And um, yeah, the pieces they're picking up now, are obviously the late pieces. You're looking for depth, but there's still guys that have got some pretty good starting experience. And so to see that depth and talent on there, I'm like, yeah, I mean, obviously Colorado's not had great offensive lines in a long time. I'm not sure how long have you been covering the Buffs? I know it's a few years more than me, but have they had a great offensive line?
See, I didn't get the '01 season, so I was
Yeah,
'03. They've had
they've had
group
individuals.
they've had groups that have performed well. Like I think 2016 was a
Yeah,
group. I think 2019 with Coach Cap, who is now the O-line coach at
yeah,
Alabama.
hmm
I thought that was a good group, but I haven't seen the depth ever anywhere near this
yeah,
level of what they have in terms of the number of guys that you legitimately would not be surprised if they were starting this season.
yeah. I agree with you. And yeah, like I said, they've had some individuals like David Bakhtiari's been here, since we've been covering him, and he was obviously left tackle for a long time in the NFL. And Nate Solder, Ryan Miller, who played with the Browns, actually was drafted by the Browns. So they've had some good individuals, but I think this has a chance to be up there with that 16 and 19 offensive line groups as far as the quality there. It's not a high bar, but I think it's one that you look at and say, all right, there's some potential here.
Yeah. I also look at the running back position, and I don't know how you make it through a season with 4 scholarship backs,
Yeah.
unless you're really lucky. And I just keep thinking, okay, if either Draylen Miller or Cam Michael just moves to running back, how much better does that make you feel about that group?
Uh, I would like it better if it was Cam, just because we've seen Draylon as a receiver, and I don't know if I want to move him out of there. But I don't know about you, but like I think Draylon is one of the best players in this team, and so I probably feel okay with him running the ball. Um, I would feel better if one of those guys went there, but I would feel much better if we saw. I want two more guys signed. I don't know if they're going to get one more. I hope they do, but I want to see a couple of guys that have been productive in college that are signed this summer. I don't know if they're on the radar or not, but I'm with you that four seems pretty thin.
Yeah, it's not against what obviously Draylen Miller and Cam Michael are as receivers, but
Right.
you look at receiver, Sincere Brown, Jack Castera, Terrell Timmons, Omarion Miller,
Yeah.
Akeem Williams, Joseph Williams, Isaiah Harge, not including those guys, and not including, well, I'll include them now, Quentin Gibson and Quinn Alex Farrakhan Jr., true freshman. You've got such a such a deep room there, and you don't at running back. I guess that's kind of what leads me to think that you're going to have to do something there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think those two kids are kids, but they're talented young men, and I think that they can do the job. It's more of just I think you should have more. I feel more comfortable with more scholarship backs on the roster, and um, especially when you lose Isaiah Gustive, and I guess he's without a team right now. I don't know where he's going to land, but the one guy you picked up, I know he's talented, but he's only got really 1 year of production under his belt in college into Kalen Taylor. So I would feel more comfortable if they actually picked up another solid running back or two. But I wouldn't mind seeing a Cam or Draylon at times at running back. I just don't want to see them as the featured backs.
I'm curious, you had a chance to talk to DeKalen Taylor, who's transferring from Incarnate Word. You mentioned him there. And they not only add a running back, but they add an explosive kickoff and punt returner as well. Uh, Kind of preview your story that you're going to have coming up with him. Is he a Dylan Edwards mold? What can CU fans expect from him?
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got from him because when you look at his career, he didn't run the ball a whole lot. 24 he was the guy, but in the previous years he didn't run the ball a whole lot, and he said that he was a slot receiver, and so that's why he wasn't really playing a whole lot at running back and running the ball. So it was after the 23 season they talked to him about moving to running back, and so he did that. And so we've seen Dylan Edwards obviously can line up as a receiver. I think he's kind of like that. I think DeKalen Taylor can be like that, but he obviously he's transitioned to running back. That my video with him, and then also the story will drop later this week. But it was interesting. He told me, when he was growing up, he didn't play football until he was like eighth grade or whatever, and didn't really like getting hit and and all the contact and everything. I said, well, you're in an interesting spot for someone that didn't like to get hit. He goes, well, I've learned to like it now, So he's grown to like it. But yeah, he's a guy that I think can be that change of pace guy and that Dylan Edwards type. I don't know if he's again that guy that is the 20 carries or 15 carries a game type of guy, but I like his potential. And obviously he can return punts and kicks as well.
It kind of reminds me of the story that Coach Flea Harrell shared when he first got to Boulder of that he was so scared to death the first time they put him back as a returner. And that's why he was so good.
Yeah,
And that's how he got the nickname Flea is
right.
that, but obviously he grew to love it as well. Now coaching running backs up in Wyoming. So it's good to see him at a new landing spot. Before you know it, a couple blinks of the eye, Brian, and we're going to be in Dallas and Frisco, Texas, covering Big 12
I know.
media days and camp. So I guess we should save some stuff for later this summer when we do more of these analysis videos. Any other thoughts you have as this team reconvenes? It's going to feel different this year
Yeah.
with Coach Prime not coaching his sons. I can't wait. It takes me a couple months because during the season, I don't know about you, Brian, but I have like all these tasks that I just put off. And then you
Yeah.
get to the end of the season and the to-do list is pretty long. And I'm finally getting down on that to-do list. But it's one of those things where you can't wait to catch your breath, and then you catch your breath, and then you can't wait to get back to it.
Right. Yeah. I get to that point every year where it's kind of, I'm a little burnt out from all the writing and things like that. And I think it's a perfect time to have the summer to kind of recharge the batteries a little bit, take some vacation time and things like that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what this team looks like because I don't know what it's going to look like. And there's so many, I think that's probably going to be the case a lot of years in the transfer portal era. That there's just so many new pieces that, uh, you can look at them and say they were productive here or there. Sincere Brown putting up big numbers at Campbell. Well, what does that look like at Colorado? DeKalen Taylor putting up big numbers at Incarnate Word. What does that look like with this team? The linebackers, Martavius French and Reginald Hughes were all conference guys of their schools. Well, how do they translate? And so there's a lot of what ifs with this team. I like some of the talent they're bringing in, but I think it's going to be really intriguing to see how it all comes together because there's so many unknowns. And last year there wasn't. I mean, there was some, but like there was a lot of core guys back a year ago that you knew. Well, you can count on Shador, Travis, Shiloh, Cam, and Levanta Bentley and all these guys. And this year there's not as much of that, so it's gonna be kind of interesting.
But Utah was not a sexy program for a long time, and they
Yeah.
did well in the trenches and won a lot of football games. So, yeah, we'll see if these lines can live up to our expectations. I think that's where the ceiling of this football team
Yeah.
really gets raised from what we saw the previous couple of years. Brian, it was great to catch up. I think we're going to try to do this maybe again next week, and maybe go get some food somewhere and do a live video.
Yeah, we need to do something live because it's been a while, and I'm sure you miss me as much as I miss you.
Of course I do. Well, Brian, it was good to see you at least virtually. And the
Yeah.
next time we meet, we'll be in person. So looking forward to that. And I appreciate everybody out there for checking out this analysis video. Thank you.